They say men fear rejection. But what if the real danger was never rejection at all? What if, hidden behind beauty, affection, and soft words, there were silent weaknesses women fight every single day, weaknesses most men never notice until it's too late? The Stoics believed that understanding human nature is the ultimate form of power. Not to manipulate, but to protect your peace, your mind, and your future. Because the man who understands emotions controls himself. And the man who controls himself becomes impossible to destroy. Tonight, you will discover 10 secret female weaknesses that quietly shape attraction, relationships, and emotional power. Some of these truths are uncomfortable. Others may completely change the way you see love forever. And the first weakness is something almost every man misunderstands. Women are deeply affected by emotional certainty. A man who constantly seeks validation unknowingly loses his value in her eyes. But a man who remains calm, centered, and emotionally grounded creates a psychological gravity she cannot easily resist. The Stoics warned against emotional dependency centuries ago. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the mind becomes enslaved by the things it cannot live without. Many men think love is built by giving more attention, more reassurance, more explanations. But attraction rarely grows through desperation. It grows through emotional stability. A woman may say she wants endless attention, but emotionally, she is drawn toward the man who can remain composed without needing constant approval in return. This is why silence has power. Not arrogant silence. Not cruel silence. But controlled silence. The ability to pause instead of reacting emotionally gives a man invisible strength. Most people are ruled by impulse. Stoicism teaches mastery over impulse. And this mastery exposes another hidden weakness. Women are highly sensitive to emotional energy. They can detect insecurity faster than words can hide it. A nervous tone. Over-explaining. Trying too hard to impress. Seeking permission instead of leading calmly. All these signals communicate one thing: uncertainty. And uncertainty weakens attraction. But the Stoic man understands something different. He understands that his worth is not decided by acceptance or rejection. His confidence is internal, not borrowed from other people's opinions. That inner certainty becomes magnetic. Because emotionally, many women search for stability in a chaotic world. They may test boundaries, create emotional tension, or even challenge a man's patience, not always consciously, but instinctively, to see whether his frame collapses under pressure. Most men fail this test immediately. They become reactive, defensive, emotional. But the Stoic remains calm even in emotional storms. And that calmness triggers something powerful inside her mind. Respect. Not forced respect. Not fearful respect. But deep emotional recognition that she is dealing with a man who governs himself. And self-governance is rare. Especially today. Another hidden weakness women struggle with is the fear of emotional abandonment. Even the most confident woman can become emotionally unsettled when she senses distance from a man she values. This does not mean playing games or becoming manipulative. Stoicism never teaches manipulation. It teaches detachment from emotional chaos. There is a difference. A man obsessed with controlling a woman becomes weak. A man focused on controlling himself becomes powerful. And women instinctively notice the difference. Because true emotional discipline is uncommon. Most people are slaves to mood, anger, jealousy, and attention. But when a man remains patient under stress, when he does not chase every emotional reaction, he creates an atmosphere of emotional safety mixed with mystery. And mystery is another weakness few people understand. What is fully understood often loses emotional intensity. But what remains slightly unpredictable holds attention. The Stoics practiced restraint for this reason. They understood that constant emotional exposure reduces personal power. Not every thought needs to be spoken. Not every emotion deserves expression. Not every conflict deserves reaction. And when a man learns this, people begin to feel his presence differently. Especially women. Because emotional control signals strength more loudly than physical appearance ever could. A loud man may attract attention. But a calm man commands it silently. And deep down, Many women crave emotional leadership far more than emotional chaos. Yet modern men are rarely taught this. They are taught to beg for attention, to fear loneliness, to over-pursue, to explain themselves endlessly. But the Stoic path teaches the opposite. Stand firm. Speak less. Observe more. React slowly. Value your peace above temporary validation. And strangely enough, the moment a man stops needing constant emotional reassurance, he becomes far more desired. Because one of the greatest female weaknesses is emotional inconsistency within themselves. Emotions fluctuate rapidly. What feels true today may disappear tomorrow. What feels attractive in one moment may feel distant in another. This is why men who build their identity around female approval eventually lose themselves. The Stoic man never does. He enjoys connection without becoming addicted to it. He appreciates love without worshipping it. And because he is emotionally independent, he becomes emotionally unforgettable. Most men spend years trying to be chosen. But powerful men choose themselves first. And once a woman realizes she cannot emotionally control a man through mood swings, guilt, or emotional pressure, something unexpected begins to happen inside her mind. She starts chasing emotional certainty from him. Not because he manipulated her, but because his calm becomes rare. In a world filled with emotional noise, overreaction, and endless need for attention, the Stoic man feels different. His energy is steady, predictable in principles, yet unpredictable in emotion. And that balance creates fascination. Many women secretly struggle with overthinking. A delayed message becomes a story in her mind. A change in tone becomes suspicion. A moment of distance becomes emotional tension. Most men react to this by over-explaining themselves. The Stoic man does not. He understands that constant reassurance weakens mystery and slowly destroys respect. Instead of panicking, he remains grounded in reality. Because Stoicism teaches that perception is often more dangerous than truth itself. And emotionally, perception controls attraction. The more emotionally reactive a man becomes, the less safe he appears psychologically. Women may not always say this directly, but they observe emotional behavior carefully. Can he handle pressure? Can he remain calm during conflict? Can he control anger? Can he tolerate silence? Can he survive discomfort without collapsing emotionally? These questions are constantly being answered through behavior, not words. This is why emotional discipline becomes a hidden form of dominance. Not dominance over women. Dominance over self. And self-mastery changes everything. A woman may ignore a man with status. She may lose interest in a man with looks. She may even walk away from a man with money. But emotional presence is harder to replace. Because very few men truly possess it. Another secret weakness many women carry is emotional comparison. Even when happy, many unconsciously compare their relationship, lifestyle, and emotional experience to others around them. Social media intensifies this weakness daily. Perfect couples. Luxury lifestyles. Endless attention. This creates emotional dissatisfaction even inside healthy relationships. The Stoic man refuses to compete in this illusion. He does not perform happiness for strangers. He does not seek validation from public attention. He values reality over appearance. And this mindset quietly separates him from most men. Because while others chase approval, he chases inner peace. That inner peace becomes emotionally addictive to people who live in constant mental chaos. Especially women who are exhausted from unstable men. Men who promise everything but control nothing. Men who speak confidently but panic under pressure. Men who seek love while secretly hating themselves. The Stoic becomes different because his identity is not built on emotional dependency. And women feel this immediately. It appears in the way he walks away from disrespect without drama. The way he refuses to beg for attention. The way he stays silent instead of arguing endlessly. The way he accepts loss without losing himself. That level of control is intimidating to emotionally immature people. Because calmness exposes instability. And many women secretly test emotional strength without realizing it themselves. Not always intentionally. Sometimes through emotional withdrawal. Sometimes through mixed signals. Sometimes through conflict created from insecurity rather than logic. Most men fail because they react emotionally instead of observing calmly. But the Stoic watches patterns, not temporary emotions. He understands that feelings change like weather. And this understanding protects him from emotional manipulation. One of the greatest weaknesses hidden inside human nature is the desire to control what fears abandonment. The more emotionally dependent someone becomes, the more controlling they often become unconsciously. This is why desperate attachment creates suffering. Stoicism teaches freedom through non-attachment. Not coldness. Not lack of love. But freedom from emotional slavery. The Stoic man can love deeply without losing his center. And paradoxically, this makes women trust him more. Because emotionally unstable men create unstable relationships. A woman may enjoy excitement temporarily, but eventually she searches for emotional safety. Not boredom. Safety. A man who remains composed during chaos becomes psychologically comforting in ways physical attraction alone can never achieve. And this leads to another hidden weakness. Many women crave emotional guidance but resist direct control. This creates internal conflict. They want strength, but not tyranny. Leadership, but not arrogance. Confidence, but not domination. Most men misunderstand this completely. Weak men become submissive. Insecure men become controlling. But the Stoic becomes centered. He leads through behavior, not force. He does not need to announce his value constantly because his actions reveal it naturally. And actions always speak louder than emotional promises. Especially to women who have heard beautiful words from emotionally weak men before. Over time, women begin trusting consistency more than charm. Because charm creates attraction. But consistency creates emotional attachment. And consistency is born from discipline. This is why Stoicism transforms relationships from emotional games into psychological clarity. The Stoic man does not chase temporary emotional highs. He studies human nature calmly. He understands that attraction without respect eventually collapses. That desire without discipline becomes destruction. And that love without self-control becomes suffering. Most people spend their entire lives trying to control others. The Stoic chooses something harder. Controlling himself. And strangely enough, that is exactly what makes him unforgettable. Because in the end, people do not remember the loudest person in the room. They remember the one who made them feel something deeper than emotion. Presence. And presence is impossible without inner control. Most men today are emotionally available to everyone and emotionally connected to themselves rarely. They speak constantly but understand little. They react instantly but reflect never. The Stoic man moves differently. He observes before speaking. He thinks before reacting. He detaches before emotions poison his judgment. And this creates another hidden psychological effect on women. Curiosity. A man who reveals everything immediately becomes predictable. But a man who maintains discipline over his emotions creates depth people naturally want to explore. Not because he is pretending to be mysterious, but because self-control naturally creates mystery. Most people expose every thought the moment they feel it. The Stoic filters emotion through reason. That alone separates him from the crowd. Women often encounter men who are physically present but emotionally chaotic. Men who become possessive too quickly. Men who attach too fast. Men who panic at small changes in attention. Over time, this emotional instability becomes exhausting. But the Stoic offers emotional steadiness. And steadiness creates trust. Not the weak kind of trust built on dependence, but the powerful kind built on emotional reliability. A woman may challenge many things about a man. His patience, his confidence, his standards, his reactions. But when she realizes his emotional state cannot be controlled by temporary moods, arguments, or validation, her entire perception changes. Because emotional resilience is rare, and rare things naturally gain value. This is why the Stoics viewed adversity as training, not punishment. Every insult, rejection, disappointment, and betrayal becomes an opportunity to strengthen emotional control. Most men become bitter after heartbreak. The Stoic becomes wiser. That wisdom changes the energy he carries into every future relationship. Women sense when a man has suffered but remained disciplined. It creates depth in his character. Not victimhood. Not emotional damage. Depth. Because pain handled correctly creates calmness. Pain handled poorly creates chaos. And many women secretly fear chaotic men more than strict men. A chaotic man is unpredictable emotionally. A disciplined man is predictable morally. There is safety in that. Another weakness hidden beneath attraction is emotional contradiction. A woman may say she wants complete emotional openness, yet lose attraction when a man becomes emotionally fragile too quickly. She may say she values kindness above all, yet feel drawn toward strength and decisiveness. Most men become confused by this contradiction. The Stoic does not. He understands that human beings are emotional before they are logical. Words often describe ideals, but behavior reveals truth. This is why observation matters more than assumption. The Stoic watches actions carefully, patterns carefully, energy carefully. And because he watches more than he reacts, he avoids emotional traps that consume most men. One of the greatest female weaknesses is attraction to emotional certainty during personal uncertainty. When a woman feels emotionally confused, unstable, stressed, or overwhelmed by life, she naturally gravitates toward the person who appears grounded. This is why calmness becomes magnetic. Not fake calmness. Not emotionless behavior. Real inner composure. The kind built through solitude, discipline, suffering, and self-reflection. Most people cannot sit alone with their own thoughts for 10 minutes without distraction. The Stoic trains himself to be alone without becoming lonely. And this independence changes the dynamic of every relationship he enters. Because he wants connection, but does not desperately need it. That difference is everything. Neediness creates pressure. Peace creates attraction. Women feel this instinctively. A man who fears losing her will slowly lose himself. A man who values himself first creates emotional balance. This balance is what many women secretly search for but rarely find. Especially in a world where emotions are exaggerated constantly for attention. The Stoic does not exaggerate. He does not beg to be understood. He does not perform masculinity loudly. He does not seek revenge after rejection. He simply continues forward with dignity. And dignity is powerful. More powerful than anger. More powerful than obsession. More powerful than emotional manipulation. Because dignity cannot be controlled externally. A woman may reject a man's attention. But she will always remember the man who accepted rejection calmly and walked away with self-respect intact. That emotional composure leaves a permanent psychological imprint. Most people expect emotional collapse after loss. The Stoic offers emotional control instead. And that control creates silent admiration. Not always immediately. Sometimes months later. Sometimes years later. Because eventually people recognize the difference between temporary excitement and lasting strength. And lasting strength is built internally long before it is visible externally. This is why Stoicism is not about attracting women. It is about becoming unshakable. Women are simply drawn toward men who have already conquered themselves. Because self-mastery radiates naturally. You see it in his eyes. His posture. His patience. His silence. His decisions. Everything becomes calmer. And in a chaotic world, calmness feels almost supernatural. Which is why the final weakness may be the most important of all. Many women secretly fear losing emotional influence over a man they deeply desire. The moment she realizes he can walk away peacefully. The moment she realizes his happiness does not depend entirely on her. The moment she understands he values his purpose more than emotional drama. Her emotional attachment often grows stronger than before. Because people value what is emotionally difficult to control. And nothing is harder to control than a man who has mastered himself. That kind of man becomes dangerous in a world addicted to emotional weakness. Not dangerous because he manipulates, but because he cannot be manipulated easily. His emotions are no longer controlled by compliments, attention, rejection, or temporary pleasure. He has trained his mind to remain stable while everything around him changes. And stability creates power. Most people never realize how much of modern relationships are built on emotional reaction. One person becomes distant, the other panics. One person withdraws attention, the other chases harder. One emotional trigger controls the entire connection. The Stoic steps outside this cycle completely. He refuses to surrender his peace for temporary emotional comfort. And women notice this immediately. Because emotional restraint is becoming increasingly rare. Many men confuse emotional control with emotional suppression. They believe Stoicism means becoming cold, detached, or incapable of love. But true Stoicism is not the absence of emotion. It is the mastery of emotion. The Stoic man feels deeply. He simply refuses to become a servant to every feeling that appears inside him. That distinction changes everything. Because a man ruled by emotions becomes predictable. A man guided by principles becomes respected. And respect sustains attraction longer than excitement ever can. Excitement fades. Beauty changes. Circumstances shift. But emotional discipline ages differently. It becomes stronger over time. This is why older, calmer men often carry a presence younger men struggle to imitate. Experience teaches them that reacting emotionally solves very little. Patience becomes strength. Silence becomes intelligence. Detachment becomes freedom. And freedom is deeply attractive. Especially to women who secretly feel trapped by their own emotional highs and lows. Another hidden weakness many women carry is the desire to feel emotionally understood without needing to explain everything directly. Most men listen only to words. The Stoic listens to behavior. He notices hesitation. Tone changes. Energy shifts. Silence. He understands that emotions often hide behind indirect communication. This awareness gives him emotional intelligence without becoming emotionally weak. And emotional intelligence combined with self-control is extremely rare in modern men. Many men have confidence without empathy. Others have empathy without strength. The Stoic develops both. And that combination becomes unforgettable. Because women do not simply respond to appearance or status long-term. They respond to emotional experience. How a man makes her feel in moments of uncertainty matters more than perfect words ever will. Can he remain calm when she becomes emotional? Can he stay respectful during conflict? Can he lead without controlling? Can he protect peace instead of feeding drama? These questions quietly determine emotional attraction over time. Most men fail because they become emotionally reactive under pressure. Pressure reveals character. And Stoicism was built for pressure. Every difficult conversation becomes training. Every rejection becomes training. Every betrayal becomes training. While others become emotional prisoners of pain, the Stoic transforms pain into wisdom. This creates a psychological depth women instinctively admire. Because most people avoid suffering. Very few transform through it. And transformation changes presence. You can feel it when someone enters a room. They no longer seek approval desperately. They no longer fear disagreement. They no longer collapse under emotional tension. Their peace comes from within. That inner peace creates emotional gravity. People feel safe around it, curious about it, drawn toward it. Especially women who are tired of unstable emotional experiences disguised as passion. Chaos may feel exciting temporarily, but eventually chaos becomes exhausting. And this is where the Stoic separates himself completely from other men. He does not compete for attention. He does not force attraction. He does not chase endlessly. Instead, he builds a life so disciplined, purposeful, and emotionally grounded that attraction becomes a byproduct of who he is. That is real power. Not the power to control others, but the power to remain centered regardless of others. Most men lose themselves trying to keep someone. The Stoic never sacrifices his identity for affection. And ironically, that is exactly why people struggle to forget him. Because emotionally independent men are rare. A woman may encounter confident men, wealthy men, attractive men. But a man fully in control of himself? That is uncommon. And uncommon things naturally hold value. This is why the Stoics constantly practiced detachment. They understood that attachment without discipline creates fear. Fear of loss. Fear of rejection. Fear of abandonment. And fear destroys masculine presence faster than failure ever could. The Stoic learns to accept loss before it arrives. Not pessimistically, but realistically. Everything temporary eventually changes. Relationships, beauty, attention, even life itself. And once a man truly accepts this, he stops clinging. He starts appreciating. That energy feels completely different. Clinging suffocates attraction. Appreciation strengthens it. Women feel the difference immediately. One man wants to possess her because he fears loneliness. Another enjoys her presence while remaining whole without her. The second man always feels more powerful emotionally. Because he is. And perhaps that is the deepest truth hidden beneath all attraction. People are drawn toward those who have already found peace within themselves. The Stoic man understands this, which is why he no longer begs for love, attention, or validation. He becomes the kind of man whose calmness speaks before his words ever do. And once a woman experiences that kind of presence, ordinary men begin to feel emotionally loud, unstable, and exhausting in comparison. Because true masculine presence is not built through performance. It is built through restraint. The modern world rewards noise. Stoicism rewards control. And the difference between those two paths becomes obvious the moment pressure enters a relationship. Anyone can appear confident when life feels easy. Anyone can speak beautifully when emotions are calm. But real character is revealed in tension. When ignored. When disrespected. When misunderstood. When tempted. When hurt. This is where most men lose themselves emotionally. They chase harder after rejection. They become angry after criticism. They seek revenge after heartbreak. They abandon discipline for temporary comfort. But the Stoic sees these moments differently. He sees them as mirrors. Every emotional reaction reveals something unconquered within himself. And self-awareness is powerful. Because the man who understands his own weaknesses becomes far harder to manipulate through them. Women unconsciously observe this constantly. Not through tests written in words, but through emotional situations. A disagreement. A delayed reply. A stressful moment. An uncomfortable truth. Each moment silently asks the same question. Can this man remain emotionally grounded when reality becomes uncomfortable? Most cannot. That is why emotional consistency feels so rare today. People change personalities based on mood. They speak from impulse. They confuse temporary feelings with permanent truth. But the Stoic builds his identity on principles instead of emotion. And principles create stability. This stability awakens something profound inside many women. Trust without pressure. Not trust forced through promises, but trust earned through repeated calmness. Because eventually words lose value without behavior behind them. Anyone can promise loyalty. Anyone can promise love. Anyone can promise forever.